Hi, I'm Roxanne Richardson, and this is the Casual Friday podcast. In this week's podcast, I have a tidbit, I have a spinning update, I have a segment on shearing day at the farm where I volunteer, and I have a finished project to share. So let's get started. Every year, the Knitting History Forum puts on an all-day conference, and it's an online conference. They record it. So if you're not able to watch it while it's live, you can watch the recordings later. And this is really handy because they are in England, and it starts at 11:15 in the morning, which is like 5 o'clock in the morning where I live. So if you live in other parts of the world, you can still go see this. So tickets are on sale. The Knitting History Forum annual conference is on Saturday, the 7th of February from 11:15 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. That's Greenwich Mean Time. And they have the programs or the presentations. They've got them. So the first one caught my eye, and I know I want to watch that. I'm not going to probably get up at 5 in the morning to watch it, but it's called The Development of Circular Knitting Needles During the 20th Century, which sounds really interesting to me. I know a little bit about that. They were invented probably in the 1920s, and they weren't great for many decades. So they weren't even that great 20 years ago. That's when they started getting better, in my opinion. So I think that'll be really interesting. There's also one about Shetland fine lace knitting. There is one, the Fair Isle Knitting Collection at the National Museums of Scotland, History, Craft, and Identity. From Shetland Sheep to U.S. Knitters, exploring the history of Shetland wool and hand knitting in the United States from 1848 to 1990. The multi-stranded history of hand knitting in Appalachia, so that's here in the United States. Knitting the pieces together, fragments of knitted stockings from the Swedish warship Vasa from 1628. I'm going to be watching that one. The Undelivered Sweater, a 200-year-old knitting time capsule. They don't say much more about that, but I'm wondering if that's another shipwreck sweater. I don't know. I'll have to watch it and find out. But I will leave links down below. I do this every year. They have like a morning part of the program, and then they break for lunch, and then they have breakout rooms online where they just put you in with maybe 6 to 10 other people from all over the world, and you can sit there and knit and chat with them and learn a little bit about them, which is always fun. I always enjoy doing that. And then they have the second half in the afternoon, and they usually have the recordings available within a day or two. So if you, again, I think last year, I didn't get up at 5, but whenever I did get up, I started watching, and then later I went back and watched the recordings. And I think they keep the recordings up for a year until the next one, I'm pretty sure. But it's a really fun event. It's something I've been doing every year for the past 4 or 5 years, and I really like it a lot. I hope you'll join in as well. Our Weavers Guild has a bunch of different special interest groups. We don't meet as a Weavers Guild monthly because there's so many different interests. They do have programs that they schedule here and there, and later this month there will be our annual holiday potluck where people can come together and show things that they've made that year, or and pass things around and be able to talk to other people. But otherwise, we have these special interest groups, and a whole bunch of different weaving special interest groups. And then there's the spinners. And so the spinning group has been meeting once a month on like the second Tuesday of the month in the evening. In the summers, we meet at a park. The daylight hours are long, the weather's beautiful. So I often go in the summer. In the winter, it meets at the Weavers Guild, which is downtown near our football stadium. And it's just that it's so dark. And it's dark, and if you can't get a spot in the parking lot, you have to park a few blocks away. It can be really cold, and you got to lug all your spinning stuff with you. So often I don't make it to the wintertime spinning groups. Well, years ago, there had been a daytime spinning group, I think that met maybe once or twice a month, and that went away. And so there are a number of people who do go to the evening group who really wanted to bring back the daytime group. And they started that up, and I've been going to that when I can. It's weekly, it's Wednesdays. So if you live in the Twin Cities area and you're free during the day, it's Wednesdays, 10 a.m. to noon at the Weavers Guild. And it's really nice to consistently see people week after week. Like for me, I need exposure to people multiple times, recognize their face, and then finally remember their name. You know, I have to be told their name a million times. It just goes in one ear and out the other. So it's nice to see, you know, people week after week. And it's been really good because, you know, I tend to be a sporadic spinner until I have a project I want to work on, and then I might work through that. Or Tour de Fleece in the summer is a good time for me to focus on spinning because it's hot. I don't necessarily want to knit as much as I do in the winter. So this is what I have been working on. This is the Falkland fiber that I dyed in Trish from Fiber Love Diary when I met her in real life in September. And she showed me her dye studio, and I was looking at the bins of all the different kinds of fiber that she had, comb top. And I saw one of Falkland, and I said, oh, I love Falkland. We were talking about it. And then she said, you want to dye some? And so we dyed it. And she helped me with that process. Like I did it all, but she I asked her questions, and she would give me a recommendation about what I could do, but I didn't have to do. And so I dyed 8 ounces of this, came out very teal color. I have been spinning it up when I go to spinning groups. So I haven't been doing much spinning at home at all, but I've been to a couple of spinning groups. And then this is how it is spinning up. And it is spinning up so easily. I always think with comb top that it might get a little compacted and you might have to loosen things up a bit before, you know, in order to work. And it's just so smooth. And when I was at spinning group the other day, a couple of people were like, oh, that color, I just love that color. I'm like, me too. And I said, and it's so easy to spin. I love Falkland. And somebody there, she's a very advanced spinner, she said, yeah, there's more Falkland wool on the market than there are sheep to produce it in Falkland, which I thought was interesting. So Falkland wool isn't really a specific breed. It could be really anything. The majority of the sheep on the Falkland Islands have merino in their background, and they might have like Corriedale, which also has merino in its background. So there's probably a lot of merino in its ancestry. But I thought that was an interesting comment about more people are selling wool as Falkland than could possibly exist. Because there was another discussion at a different spinning group I had a few weeks ago where somebody was talking about what's being put on yarn labels these days. That she had been in Colorado and there was some yarn that was Rambouillet, and Rambouillet is French merino, so it's essentially merino. It's different, but it's French merino if you wanted to give it another label. But it said Rambouillet, and then, I don't know, in parentheses, merino. And we thought, you know, is that truth in labeling? You know, so I do wonder how much false labeling is going on. Regardless, I love this spinning fiber, and I can't wait to finish it up. I'm going to do a 3-ply. It was 8 ounces. I divided it up into 3 like sections that are each about 2.6 ounces, and I'll be doing a 3-ply because it's very easy to ply fairly thinly. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I originally had planned to give it to a specific person, and that's not going to happen. So I have to figure out how I'm going to use 8 ounces of this, or I could give it to my daughter who also likes this color. I don't know. I don't know what I'll do with it, but I'm loving it. I volunteer at a place called Gale Woods Farm. It is owned by the Three Rivers Park System. That's our county park system. It is a working farm, so they grow food on the farm. And the purpose is to educate the public about where their food comes from. So they have different classes during the daytime, during the school year for kids who were homeschooled. They have events on the weekends. They have school field trips will come there. You can get married there. I met a woman on Shearing Day who was her first time volunteering at the farm, and she has her wedding scheduled there for next summer. She's a spinner and a weaver and I assume a knitter as well. So, there's all kinds of activities that go on the farm, and there's a big walking, biking trail that you can go on, and so you can see the animals out in the different fields and stuff. So they have a flock of Finn sheep, and they have shearing twice a year. They have it in the spring when everybody gets shorn, and then they have it in the fall. And it kind of varies on who gets shorn in the fall. This year, it was only lambs that were going to market, meaning they were destined to be meat. And that can be really sad for knitters or spinners who really value lamb for their fleeces, and maybe we don't eat lamb ourselves or eat any meat, as the case is for some people. But again, as the manager of the farm pointed out, we're a farm. We produce food. So some of the animals are going to go to market. Some of them are kept to reproduce for the next year. And so then the public can see the entire growth process and understand more about where their food comes from. So in the spring, they have what's called Lamb Watch. And so they have the couple of week time period where they're pretty sure this is the time when the ewes are going to be delivering their lambs. And Finn sheep, on average, deliver 3 babies. Could be anywhere from 2 to 5. But on average, it's 3. And so they have people sign up to volunteer to be on Lamb Watch from 8 p.m. until I think 2 in the morning. And then if somebody is in labor and looks like they're having trouble, we can call the farm manager, and he just lives a quarter mile up the road, and he can come and get things figured out. Or if things are going well, we can just watch it and make sure everything is going okay. It's kind of nerve-wracking the first time you do that because you really don't know what you're doing. You're just sort of left there. And then if you are on Lamb Watch during a time when other lambs have been born that need to be bottle fed, for example, if a sheep has 5 babies, they usually can't feed all 5 of them. And so they might choose a couple of them to be bottle fed. And so you would get to bottle feed them. And I say get to because it's just adorable to be able to hold a lamb and feed it. So last spring I was on Lamb Watch with Shelley, who is the spinner who introduced me to Gale Woods, and we were on Lamb Watch together. And we got there like half an hour after a ewe had delivered, I think 3 or 4 lambs. So we missed the delivery, but we were there all night watching the lambs to make sure everything was okay. The first lambs that were born in the season was a couple weeks before they expected, because we'd had a really kind of weird spring where there were some really warm days early on, and they think that may have caused some of the ewes to start delivering earlier. And they tag the ears of the lambs as they're born, and every year has a letter that signifies the year that they were born. So this year, the sheep that were born were all tagged with the letter N, and then they are just given a sequential number. So the first ewe that delivered, I think she delivered, it was either quads and one of them didn't make it, or it was quints and one of them didn't make it, because nobody was expecting it. and there was one lamb that just, the mucus hadn't gotten wiped away. The ewe hadn't gotten to it, and there were no humans around to watch it. But amongst those first few babies was N003. Their mother was a brown sheep, and the babies were brown, and they had different kinds of markings from what I remember. But N003 was so tiny, just like 2 pounds, something like that, really tiny. And so I was saying, it's such a little peanut. And so my friend Shelley and I were calling that sheep Peanut all summer long. We were at the shearing event. We were working the skirting table, where after the shearer is done getting the fleece off, somebody brings it from the barn to the skirting table. We lay it out, and then we take like poopy bits out or parts that are just like not good. And these fleeces were really, really clean. We hardly had any waste. And then you check it. Some people like do like this with it to hear the sound. And if it sounds like kind of like a drum, then it's good. But if you hear crackling, then it's weak. We were also learning some new things where you could just pull on it, and if you could hear the crackling, then you would know that there was some weaknesses in it. So every lamb, every sheep that was being shorn a couple of weeks ago was a lamb. And what can happen with the lambs sometimes, because their immune systems are just building, is they might get parasites. And so they get treated for the parasites, but that can cause a weakening in wherever their fleece was at the time when they get ill. That part is weakened, and then it grows more. And so you'll get a part that's weak somewhere along the staple length. We had quite a few that were actually really good, which was kind of surprising. Sherry, who manages all of the fiber stuff, was really pleased with how many good fleeces we had. And so we sorted them out like, okay, these are going to be going for felting projects because they've got some weaknesses on them. And then these we will save to be turned into yarn. And then at the end, once we had done all of that, we took the ones that were good for yarn and we re-skirted them. We separated out shorter staples so that we would have only the longer staples portions of the fleece remaining, and then that would go to yarn and the shorter bits would go to felting. And that was a learning process for me. I've never tried doing that with a fleece. I know some people go through and they separate the shortest, the medium, they separate everything out and they use the different parts for different things. I just had never done that before, and I didn't really know how to do it. So that was something that I was learning. Well, we had 17 lambs that were sheared that day, and they were all going to market. And the very last fleece that came through, it has a piece of paper with the number of the sheep on it. And I said, oh, it's N003. It's Peanut. And Shelley and I were like, no. We were so disappointed that Peanut was going to be going to market. She's a beautiful brown fleece. And it turned out her fleece was really nice and was going to be one of the ones that would be turned into yarn. And Shelley's husband was a volunteer in the barn, and the way they selected which lambs were going to go to market was if they weighed 85 pounds or more, they were going to go to market. Well, they only had 15, and you really need to have a certain number of them when you go to market. You can't, because of the cost of it. And so they told the volunteers, just catch 2 more, any 2. And so they caught the 2 that were easiest to catch, which included Peanut. She's very friendly. And so we were very sad about that. And then Farmer Tim, farm manager, came in, and we were like, oh, we're Peanut. We're so sad. He's like, it's a farm. We produce food. We're like, yes, you're right. But we can still be sad about it. And that tells you why you're not supposed to be naming farm animals like that. Yesterday, I was at the farm as fiber volunteer. They have different ways of volunteering for fiber. You can do like it's once or twice a month where you go there in a very specific day time period, and they have projects that they want you to do, like weighing out wool for a class that's coming up, like little 1 ounce or 2 ounce portions, or to make kits for the farm store, or there's going to be an event and we want to have a bunch of kits available for this. So on shearing day, that was one of the activities that you could choose, was to make some kind of wet felted project. It's usually some kind of seasonally related thing as well. So they have those kinds of things. And I did that at first, and then I found out that, oh, you could also work alone, basically on whatever day works for you and time works for you. And you can have projects like scouring fleece or dyeing fleece or carding fleece, and you're working alone. So if you like the social aspect of it, you'd have to you probably want to volunteer in doing packaging up the kits. Sometimes they're doing wet felting as well for items that will be sold in the farm store. But that just wasn't as interesting to me as doing the projects that do require you to be alone, because those are the same sorts of things that I do at home for my own spinning, like scouring fleeces, dyeing, and it's just on a bigger scale and more repetitions of it. So I just have the opportunity to learn more, and like going to the skirting table and learning more about how you tell if the fibers are weak. I'd heard that over and over, but this was the first time I could actually hear it and notice the difference. But this was also the first time I had ever tried separating shorter staple length wool from the longer in a given fleece. And so it was good to have people there who kind of knew better and could show you, what to do, and be able to do it quickly instead of, painstakingly slow. So I want to show you some pictures of N003, who we called Peanut, when she was a brand new baby, and then before shearing, and then after shearing, and then what the fleece looked like when I was done scouring it yesterday. It was beautiful fleece, very, very clean. It'll be really fun to see that turned into yarn. For the third, maybe fourth Casual Friday in a row, my finished object is a pair of socks. And we'll go to the overhead in a bit and talk more about these. So at the end of October, I went to Florida and I had a reunion with my college friends, and I was knitting a sock. You were asking about the sock knitting process. They were fascinated by the self-striping yarn. And then I said, I'm happy to make socks for anybody who wants them. And I ended up tracing the feet of 5 of my friends and the hand of one of them who wants gloves instead of socks. And so the past 2 Casual Fridays, I've showed you the socks I've made for each friend. So each friend is taking me a couple of weeks to knit them a pair of socks. And I've been doing this not just by tracing their feet, but I also take additional measurements. I measure their ankle and their ball of foot. I measure the heel diagonal, which, let me get my model. So that's the circumference across, can you see this? The instep across there and all the way to where the heel bends and becomes a foot. So that diagonal, and I ask them, how long up they want it on their leg, and then what kind of colors that they would like, that sort of thing. I talked in the last Casual Friday about how I don't recommend knitting surprise gifts for people unless you really, really know for sure that they're like the colors that you have chosen and that they want the item that you're going to knit them, and if they want knitted items at all. I prefer a more collaborative process. So I was tracing their feet. They wanted socks. They told me their color preferences. My friend Pat, who was the first pair of socks I knit, he said, people were giving their color, and he's like, you know what? You decide. Anything goes. which kind of made me more nervous knitting his socks, because I'm like, oh, I hope he likes these. I hope he likes it. Oh, he'll like these because he said anything goes, and he's a really open person, and he's creative and all that kind of stuff. But I still was nervous about it. My second friend said he liked blues and greens, and I just picked something from my stash that was a really nice indie dyed self-striping yarn. Like the striping pattern didn't repeat, and it came with contrast yarn that I could use for the toes, heels, and cuffs. And so I sent those 2 packages out into the world, and they both received them. And I had asked them, please send me photos of them on your feet, because I want to be able to see if I got the fit right. Because I do customize with the measurements, and then I also try to adjust the toe. If I try to pick the type of toe and then adjust it based on their toe shape, because some people have toes that are almost all the same. Some people have short toes, some people have really long toes, some people have a really sharp angle, some people have, the middle toes are longer. So there's kind of different approaches that I might use. I was worried about, the fit. I was less worried about the fit with Patrick, because his toe shape seemed more normal to me. And it was my friend Brian who had really unusual toes. His big toe and his second toe are kind of spread apart like that. So there's quite a bit of space. And so he needed an end of toe that was wider to accommodate that. And that was something I'd never done before. So they did send me photographs. Brian sent me 3 photographs so I could see from every angle, and they fit him really well. And then I had a thought. I knit socks for my brother, who has very large feet. My brother has 10-inch ankles, and he has a ball of his foot that's just over 11 inches. So those are very big. And a couple of years ago, when I hit on this idea of using the heel diagonal in order to inform me for how to make some adjustments, I measured my brother's heel diagonal, and he took off his commercially knit sock in order for me to do that. And they had left these red marks on his legs. And I was like, oh my God. And he's like, yeah, the socks you knit for me don't do that. And I had only knit him 2 pair before that. And so I was like, okay, so now I knit my brother 1 or 2 pairs of socks every year, because I can make them to fit his foot. It isn't just a length thing or but it's also that circumference thing, or it's the mismatch between the circumference of the ankle and the ball of foot, where you need to make adjustments so that those 2 parts of the sock are different circumferences. Again, my brother has a 10-inch ankle and 11 1/8 ball of foot. Brian has a 10.5-inch ankle and a 10 3/4 inch ball of foot. So bigger ankle than my brother, but smaller ball of foot, closer to each other. So when I saw those socks on Brian's feet, it reminded me of my brother. And I said to Brian, do commercial socks, are they tight on you? He's like, yeah, they leave indentations, but I can tell these won't. These just fit my leg really nicely. And he talked about how easy they were to slide on. And I imagine if he's got a large circumference foot and leg, socks are probably tight and harder to get on his feet. And I really liked seeing that they do fit his toe well. So that was very exciting. Well, then Patrick sent photos and of him wearing his. They only sent 1, and I looked at them and I thought, oh, I'm not sure I got the fit of the toe right. I said, they look a little roomy in the toe. And he didn't send a picture of him wearing on the side, because sometimes if you don't have it pulled up around your heel exactly right, it can make things too roomy at the toe. So I did tell him to do that. Maybe they'll fit better, but I would like to see a side photo someday. But I'm thrilled about Brian, and thrilled that these are socks that actually fit him really nicely. The socks that I made the past 2 weeks are for my old roommate, Linda. We lived together all 4 years of college, and I was a bridesmaid in her wedding. She was my matron of honor in my wedding. We've seen each other a number of times over the years. Whenever we see each other, we just pick up where we left off the time before. We get hoarse talking to each other. She did not want self-striping sock yarn. She wanted purple. And I asked her, a solid purple or tonal? And she's like, tonal. So I was looking at my yarns. I have some hanging on the wall above here, and I didn't really see anything. I had a solid purple. I didn't have anything that was tonal. I didn't think. And so I ordered some, and what I ordered was a Malabrigo sock yarn. And when I got it, I was like, ugh, I don't know if this is right. It's 100% merino. I don't love merino for sock yarns. It's just not as durable. It's also hand wash only, and there's no nylon in it. So I like some nylon for durability. I like things to be machine washable, especially someone who's new to hand knit socks, because they're going to forget, and they're going to, might end up in the dryer. And I really would like to avoid the socks getting ruined and have them be upset and not be able to wear them. So I was thinking about it, and I thought, okay, well, if it's a solid-ish, and it was pretty solid, I would actually call this a semi-solid, not a tonal. So the Malabrigo is kettle dyed, which means they dunk the skeins in a kettle, and so the yarn is mostly going to be solid, but there's going to be some places that are a little lighter than others. And it just seemed pretty uniform to me. But I was thinking about what kind of stitch pattern I wanted to use. So looking through my Ravelry library, trying to get inspiration. And then I saw a pattern that I've used before for socks for myself. And I thought, oh, that'll be a good one. For me, it's ideal for socks. In the past, I've knit a lot of complicated sock patterns, and I really liked that. But then I got to the point where I decided I really liked self-striping yarn, because that's my mindless knitting, because the yarn is entertaining, and I save the complexity for sweaters, because those are the two things I knit the most. And so I like socks because they're a take-along project. I don't have to think too much. So if I am doing a stitch pattern these days, I want it something simple. So a short repeat, short multiple, so it starts repeating after a few stitches, and not too many rows in the repeat. This stitch pattern is perfect. It's a 4-stitch, 4-row repeat. 2 of the rows are plain stockinette. Makes it really easy. But when I was thinking about the stitch pattern for this, I suddenly remembered that I actually won 3 skeins of purple yarn at our guild's retreat last spring. And I'm like, where did I store those? Because it wasn't in where my other sock yarn was. And so I found the little cubby, and it was Knit Picks yarn, and it must be really old, 15, 20 years old, because I couldn't even find on Ravelry the name of this yarn. It was called something like Royal Tonal, and you can't find that anywhere on Ravelry. So I thought, well, let me look at that one of this tonal yarn that was in there, and I sent Linda a picture of the Malabrigo and the Knit Picks, and I said the Malabrigo is more luxury yarn, 100% merino, no nylon for durability. You'd have to hand wash, and it seems more like a semi-solid. And then the other one has got some nylon for durability, totally machine washable, and it has a little more variation in the color. It's truly tonal, and she chose the Knit Picks, which I was very happy with. So these are the socks here. The pattern is called Petty Harbour, and I'll leave a link down below. It's a very simple knit purl pattern, really easy. I did make a couple of modifications that I want to talk about. So we can go to the overhead, and I will show you what it was that I did. This is the tracing of the sock for my old roommate, Linda. She had a 9.5-inch ankle and a 9.5-inch ball of foot. The total length of her foot was 9.5 inches. And now I'm going to have to go back and check the sock because I almost feel like I made it 10 inches. So I might have done this wrong. I might have to take the toes out. I'll have to measure. And she had a 12 3/4 inch diagonal. So this is the Petty Harbour, and you can see there is some like flashing here. So like I said, this is a tonal yarn, but the knit purl pattern helps to break things up a little bit. And I think on camera, the flashing is more obvious than it is in person. These lighter parts really show more light, at least on my monitor, than they actually do in person. One of the things that I wanted to do was to make the instep symmetrical. And what I mean by that is you can see that this stitch pattern, there's these obvious columns right here. These are basically garter stitch columns. These are columns of knit 1, purl 1 that go all the way up. And then the 3 stitches in between, you have a column of stockinette, then you have a column where there's a purl every 4 rounds, and then another column of stockinette. And so what I wanted was both sides of the instep to have a matching column. So this is a multiple of 4 stitches. So you're only going to get this every 4 stitches. And so if I were to divide this sock in half to do the heel and the instep, it wouldn't have been symmetrical. So let me show you what that looks like on a chart. So here is the 4-stitch pattern. The first round is all stockinette. The second round is knit 3, purl 1, knit 3, purl 1, knit 3, purl 1. Then it's stockinette, and then it's knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. So if I were to divide this in half in order to do the heel, I would have that obvious column of garter on the left side. I'd have a column of stockinette there, and then I'd have this column that has a purl stitch every so often. And it would look like, to my thinking, like it was kind of off center. And so what I did was, when it was time to divide in half for the heel, I had 72 stitches, which meant I should have 36 for the instep and 36 for the heel, which is a multiple of 4. So what I did was I worked 35 stitches across when it's time to do the heel until I got to here. And then I let this stitch move to the instep. And so this was symmetrical for the heel, which didn't really matter because I was changing the stitch pattern. But for the instep, I ended up with something that looked like this, because I had taken this last column off of the instep and moved it to, or I'd taken this column from the half of the round that was going to be the heels, and I moved it to the other half, and that became the first stitch of the round. When I was back to, after the heel was done, I was working in the round, and so then instep has this column on either side. And that meant that I had 35 stitches for the heel and I had 37 for the instep. So then I would have to, when it was time to do the toe, I would have to move that extra stitch back to the other side in order to work the toe evenly. But that's not too much of an issue. But I do like to make things symmetrical on the instep if I can. I've gotten quite a few questions in the comments these past few weeks because I've been talking so thoroughly about how I am customizing fit for my friends whose feet are really varying, and sometimes they have things about them that I haven't seen before, or I just have experience and know, oh, I'm going to need to do this with their toe or with their heel. I need to do that. And so I've gotten questions like, how much negative ease are you working with? How long do you make the sock foot, relative to the actual length of the foot itself? I don't talk about this a lot. I mention it once in a while, but I have a written tutorial on knitting custom fit socks. It's called the August Sock Knit Along. I developed it in the summer of 2019, and we did a knit along in August of that year. It's a multi-part PDF, and it goes through measuring your foot in all the different ways, and then looking at your measurements and comparing them to what the standard sock formula is expecting, because the standard sock formula assumes that the ball of foot and ankle are the same, and so the foot and the leg are going to be knit the same circumference. It assumes that based on those circumferences that your heel is a certain height, and so you're knitting heels based on formulas, and sometimes those just aren't going to fit you correctly. And rather than having to pick the heel based on what's going to fit your foot using a standard formula, the August Sock Knit Along shows you where your foot is likely not to match with the formula, and therefore where you can modify your sock heel based on your measurements so that you can knit any of the different heels and they will fit you. So it has, I think, 3 different heels. It's got a short row heel, peasant heel, heel flap, a couple of different stitch patterns for if you're doing a heel flap. It's got a couple of different toes as well in there so that you can adjust it. And then I've got at least 50 videos that about sock knitting. Many of my videos are linked to from the PDF. So it's like you want to see a video on this explanation, you can get that. But I have a ton more videos besides that help with sock fit issues. The August Sock Knit Along is for cuff down socks. I have been asked to do one for toe up socks, and that may come out at some point in the future. I don't have I've been wanting to do that. I just haven't done it yet. But if that's something that's of great interest, that could push me a little further. In the meantime, I also have videos. This is gift giving season. I also have videos on how to knit a hat without a pattern, cuff, bottom up. And I just did one, I think last week, on how to knit a top down hat without a pattern. I also have how to knit fingerless mitts without a pattern. I do, because one of my college friends is requesting gloves and I'm going to do them custom fit. I might do a video on how to knit gloves without a pattern if I can figure out a way to do it in a simple and straightforward way that doesn't make people's eyes cross. That's just the balance that I'm trying to figure out how to make. If there's any other types of videos that people would be interested in, how to knit a whatever without a pattern, not sweaters, but accessories. I couldn't do a 20-minute video on how to knit a sweater without a pattern unless I just gave you the standard top-down raglan formula that doesn't really fit very well. My goal in these is to show you how to knit these things without a pattern, but have them fit the person that is going to wear them. So let me know down in the comments what sorts of things that you might be interested in, and also what sorts of maybe written tutorials that you would like to see that might be similar to the August Sock Knit Along. And I will link to that August Sock Knit Along pattern down in the video description. Well, that's it for this week's Casual Friday. If you have any comments or questions about today's video or suggestions for videos you'd like to see in the future, you can leave those down in the comments below. Or join the discussion in my Ravelry group, Rocks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.